The rain poured over the city like the sky itself was weeping. From her office on the 35th floor, Amelia Vance stared through the glass walls of her empire, Vance Industries, watching as the world below blurred into a storm of headlights and shadows. She had just fired 3 employees that day, each one begging, pleading, explaining their reasons for poor performance. But in her mind, excuses were weakness. Business was war. Compassion, she had once believed, was the first step toward failure. Yet that night, something, or someone, would begin to unearth a part of her heart she thought had long since died. If you believe kindness still has power in this world, if you believe people deserve second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Spot. Your small gesture helps us spread stories that remind the world what it truly means to be human. That night, Amelia stayed late at the office. The storm had grown wilder, and only a handful of employees remained, quietly tidying up before heading home. One of them was the janitor, a thin, older man named Daniel Hayes. He moved silently, mop in hand, humming softly as he worked. She had seen him dozens of times but never really looked at him. He was part of the background, invisible, like the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. Yet for some reason that night, Amelia's gaze lingered on him. His hands trembled slightly as he wrung out the mop, and when he thought no one was watching, he clutched his chest and took a long breath, steadying himself before continuing. Something about that moment unsettled her. She told herself to ignore it. But when she saw him leaving the building well past midnight, still soaked from the rain, carrying an old backpack and walking in the opposite direction of the bus stop, curiosity got the better of her. Against her own better judgment, Amelia grabbed her coat, left her sleek black car behind, and decided to follow him on foot. The streets were nearly empty. Puddles reflected the city's broken lights, and the rhythmic sound of her heels echoed faintly behind him. Daniel didn't seem to notice her presence as he weaved through the back alleys, past shuttered shops and sleeping apartment blocks. Eventually, he stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse, its walls cracked and graffiti-stained. She watched as he pushed open the rusted metal door and disappeared inside. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, quietly, she followed. The air inside smelled of damp concrete and dust. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light, and what she saw next stopped her breath cold. Dozens of people, men, women, and children, huddled under thin blankets, sleeping on cardboard mats. Old lamps glowed faintly in the corners, illuminating tired faces and fragile bodies. In the middle of it all was Daniel, kneeling beside a small stove, pouring soup into bowls. The backpack he carried was full of bread, medicine, and small cans of food. He moved gently, speaking softly to those awake, smiling despite the exhaustion etched deep into his face. Amelia stood frozen, her heart thundering. The man she had barely noticed for years, the janitor whose name she almost forgot, was running a secret midnight charity for the city's forgotten souls. She watched as Daniel wrapped a blanket around a crying child, his voice barely audible over the storm outside. "You're safe now," he murmured. "You'll be okay." Then he sat down beside an elderly man whose hands shook from cold and handed him his own jacket. That same jacket, she realized, he wore every single day at work. Amelia backed away quietly, tears burning in her eyes. She didn't want him to see her, not yet. That night, she returned home, unable to sleep. The image of Daniel's gentle, worn face haunted her. The next morning, she called the HR department to ask about him. The file they sent shocked her. Daniel Hayes, 63 years old. Widowed. Former paramedic. Joined the cleaning staff 7 years ago. No complaints. No missed shifts. No requests for raises. A perfect employee, invisible and unappreciated. As the days passed, Amelia couldn't focus on anything else. During meetings, her mind drifted back to that warehouse. How long had he been doing this? How did he manage to feed so many when he earned barely enough to survive? Eventually, her guilt and curiosity pushed her to confront him. That evening, as Daniel was about to leave, she stopped him in the lobby. She told him she wanted to talk, to understand. He looked startled, uncomfortable even, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Over a quiet cup of coffee in the break room, he shared his story. He had lost his wife to cancer, he said softly, and with her, their savings. They had once dreamed of opening a small shelter together, a place where no one had to sleep on the streets. After she died, Daniel couldn't let go of that dream. So every night, after cleaning the offices of people far richer than he would ever be, he spent his remaining hours feeding those who had nothing. She always said love isn't love until it costs you something, he told Amelia, his eyes glistening. Amelia didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened with shame. All her life, she had measured worth by productivity, profit, and precision. Yet here was a man who earned almost nothing, and gave everything. That night changed her. Slowly, quietly, her heart began to shift. In the weeks that followed, Amelia began visiting the warehouse. She didn't announce herself as the CEO, she came simply as a volunteer, dressed in plain clothes, handing out food, sitting beside the people Daniel cared for. She saw mothers clutching babies, veterans lost to trauma, children whose laughter had faded into silence. The city she thought she knew had another side, one she had ignored from the comfort of her penthouse. Each night, Daniel greeted her with the same gentle warmth, as if her status meant nothing. He never asked for help, never complained. But as time went on, Amelia began to notice his health deteriorating. The long nights and heavy work were wearing him down. She urged him to rest, but he always smiled faintly and said, "There's always someone colder than me." One winter evening, the city was hit by a brutal cold front. Amelia arrived at the warehouse to find it unusually quiet. Daniel wasn't there. Panic clenched her chest. The people inside said he had gone out early that morning to deliver supplies to an underpass camp, and hadn't returned. Without hesitation, Amelia grabbed her coat and went searching through the icy streets. She found him hours later, collapsed near the riverbank, his body trembling from exhaustion and cold. He was clutching a paper bag filled with medicine and a child's blanket. She knelt beside him, tears mixing with the snow. He looked up weakly and whispered, "Promise me you'll keep them warm." Then his eyes fluttered shut. Daniel passed away that night. The news shattered her. The next morning, Amelia didn't go to work. She stood before the empty warehouse, grief wrapping around her like chains. But then she looked at the faces of those Daniel had helped, the people he'd loved with every ounce of his soul, and she understood what she had to do. Weeks later, Vance Industries made an announcement that stunned the city. The company would be funding a new initiative, the Hayes Foundation, a full-scale shelter and rehabilitation program for the homeless, named after the janitor who had shown them the true meaning of humanity. Amelia poured her resources into expanding his dream, not as an act of charity, but as an act of redemption. When the shelter opened, she placed a small plaque at the entrance. It read, "In memory of Daniel Hayes, who cleaned more than floors, he cleaned hearts." The first night, as she walked through the halls, she could almost hear his soft humming echoing in the distance. She smiled, tears glistening under the warm light, knowing that somewhere, somehow, he'd be proud. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Spot. It helps us keep telling real stories that remind the world that kindness can change lives. Speech balloon special request, comment below, what does kindness mean to you? We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.